Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. We've got an awesome interview teed up for you guys here this week. Yet again, voice of the Minnesota Wild, Joe O'Donnell. A little bit lengthier interview, close to 40 minutes. So actually not going to dive too much into the Wild talk because, quite frankly, we've hit on everything that there is to hit on at this point. Lot more on both the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Minnesota Wild on yesterday's episode of Judd's Buds. So everyone can go check that out if you have a hankering for any additional hockey talk. You can also go back to last week's episode of Fellowship of the Rink that featured Michael Russo. But otherwise, everyone, enjoy an awesome sit down again with our friend Joe O'Donnell. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me, because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is one of us via almost 2 decades now with the Minnesota Wild organization. So far back that the Houston Aeros were still a thing. We have the guy you get to listen to every Wild game on the radio, Joe O'Donnell. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you jumping on with us. Now, I got to open up here with a little bit of a weird one. You are in rare air with, it's got to be a short list of like 5 or less that have actually met in the wild, in his natural habitat, the thing they call Spoked Z. What is it like meeting that character, not only just being able to speak with him, but seeing him in Boston, in his environment?
It was awesome. I'm glad I reached out to him. He's been a Twitter follow favorite of mine for a while. We had a couple days in Boston this past season, and I said, you know what? Why not? Let's hit him up.
Yeah.
And reached out to him on Twitter. Met him out at a local sports bar. We had a couple of light beers. Well, I did, and he was probably drinking something more Spoked Z-ish. And we just watched some sports. I think it was like NBA games were on, whatever, maybe a hockey game or two. We were just chatting up. I got to know a little bit about his story and what makes him a Wild fan, and it was kind of cool to hang out with him for a bit while we're in Boston.
Different vibe, for sure.
Yeah, he's the man.
As you know, it's the Fellowship of the Rink is the name of our podcast for Lord of the Rings fandom. I don't know if you're an LOR fan. If you're not, do you have kind of a nerd itch you like to scratch sometimes, or something? You're kind of a movie, book series, or like a collectible, or like what kind of thing are you go to?
Joe, I'm more of a Star Wars guy. I've pretty much seen it all Star Wars wise. I guess I probably haven't seen like the last season of Mandalorian, and maybe I don't think I watched all the Obi-Wan spinoff for whatever reason, but I did watch Andor. I've seen all the staples, like, the actual movies and all the spinoff movies. Got our kids into them. Kind of made my wife watch them all once upon a time. That would be kind of, that's more a few years ago. Like, I haven't really kept up too much. They're all long, man. Like, My viewing time on TV is like 11 p.m. Kids are asleep till like 11:45. Then I start to fall asleep on the couch. So like I got like time for like one Netflix show a night usually, type of thing, or Amazon Prime, whatever. So I'll try to dive into a show and stay with it, knock it out, move on to the next one.
Nice.
Well,
do you have like a go-to, whether it's series or movie or even just character? Like what's really the nerdiest you get with Star Wars?
That's a good question. Like for me, Empire Strikes Back, like the ice planet of Hoth, that opening scene there, like that to me is the best part of Star Wars. I did really enjoy Andor, which was a recent spinoff. I haven't watched season 2 yet. That was cool. I kind of like had some friends say it was sort of like an adult version of Star Wars. Like it was less of the Jar Jar Binkses and more of like real life kind of stuff,
Yeah.
you know? So I did enjoy that a lot. Yeah, I liked Rogue One a ton, which was one of like the later spin-off movies. But yeah, I'd probably say just like for me, Empire Strikes Back, like that was one that I've probably watched the most, and that's an OG one.
I'll tell you what, Sky, every time we're on the road with the Wild, and then sometimes the broadcasters and writers hang out at a local watering hole, and every time we go somewhere, I know Joe Downs will look for the Eagles game or find some way to find, Sunday or Thursday night or whatever. And hard to not, when you grow up that close to Philly, it's hard not to be a huge Philly sports fan. So take us inside your fandom of Philly sports and what was like some of your favorite moments early on, formative moments. Could have been Eagles or Flyers or whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of winning, unfortunately. 93 Phils, I remember that pretty well. I would have been 13 at the time, coming back. Like, I feel like there were like afternoon baseball playoff games, right? You get them a little bit now, but I just remember like getting off the bus, kind of like running down the street to get home and watch the 93 Phils in the playoffs. I did go to game 1 or game 2 of the NLCS that year with my dad. But my dad was like the driving force there. Like he was a huge, in Philly they call it the 4-for-4. Like he never played hockey, but loved the Broad Street Bullies. Went from his era, kind of became a hockey fan because of him. He's a diehard Eagles and Phillies fan. Sixers had a run when I was like in college with the Allen Iverson days, which was awesome. But they really never got over the hump. The first I was born in 1980. Phillies won the World Series in 80. Sixers won the NBA title in 83, but, I was in diapers. So the first time I got to experience a championship was the '08 Phillies, and that for me was like just unbelievable. I just got into Houston, actually, take the job with the Arrows that, like August, September. Phils go on this improbable run, win the World Series. I still remember sitting in my apartment with John Lammers, who had a cup of coffee in the NHL, but was more of like a minor league guy. He was there for tryouts that year, and I knew him from Boise, from the Idaho Steelheads days. And he was like in a hotel across the street because it's training camp time, early part of the season there in October. And John Lammers came over, and we watched. Like he was probably like, this dude is psych. Like he knew me as the radio guy from Boise. He probably bit off more than he could chew coming over that day or that night and watching the Phillies win the World Series. I was going crazy. He was probably like, what's wrong with this guy?
I actually covered the Tampa Bay Rays back then at the newspaper in Tampa. So that was an improbable, crazy run for them too in '08. And remember Rays fans hoping to get out of Citizens Bank Park alive after some of those. And a delayed game, like 2 days delayed, right? They had a rain out and they had to play. We were in Delaware for like at a hotel because they couldn't find hotels there. And then they had to resume the game 5 or 6 in Philly 2 days later, which was kind of wild.
It was game 5 that got like, and with the Arrows, in hockey schedule, like a lot of times the first thing I do when the Wild schedule come out or the Iowa Wild schedule, depending on where I was at in my career, is like I will immediately match up the Eagles schedule with, the Wild schedule, see how many games I'm screwed on, you know what I mean, that I can't watch. But that was in Houston at the time. That game got rained out in '08. And the next night, the Arrows had a game. And so I'm thinking, dude, you got to be kidding me. They're going to play this the following night. I'm not going to be able to watch the last, 4 innings of World Series Game 5. But since they pushed it another day, we had a day off, I was able to watch. I would have been just devastated. Because back then, it's not that long ago, but 2008, you weren't streaming sports on your phone like you are now. Mm-hmm. I could walk around now with YouTube TV or whatever, or ESPN Plus, and I could watch the game anywhere. That was difficult in '08, so that would have been an absolute crush, just an emotional killer for me had I not been able to watch that and really, again, embrace and sort of enjoy the first sports title that I was able to root for, and being old enough to understand and really have put in sort of that fan equity to enjoy it.
For the non-Philadelphia fans, do you have any pro tips on how to best climb a light pole when it's greased up?
I haven't done it myself. I'm sure if you give me a minute here to send some text, I might be able to to get some insider trading on that. I don't know when that really became a thing. It is pretty funny to me. Philadelphia fans get a bad rap. Sometimes it's deserved, right? Like you shouldn't cross the line the way that some people do. But a couple bad apples don't make up a fan base. And one thing I can tell you about Philadelphia is the passion runs deep. It's a city that prides itself on being hardworking, blue collar, and always feeling like they've got a chip on their shoulder. When their athletes and sports teams play like that, you know, it balls to the wall, that type of mentality, like hard work, the comeback story, the underdog story, the guy that maybe has a tough start to his career and then finally almost redeems himself or reaches the pinnacle. Those are the moments. Those are the athletes and the players that are just absolutely revered in that town. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like the losing that comes with being a sports fan stinks, but when you finally enjoy the success of a team that you root for, there's nothing sweeter than it. And I think Philly does it right, man. They hold their players accountable. The Boo Birds are always out, and if you're paying money to a sporting event, the team's not performing, or an athlete's being a bum, you should let them hear about it. That's how I was raised, and that's how I still yell at the TV now.
Well, a lot of legendary voices in that market too. Harry Callis is one come to mind, and I wasn't sure what was your kind of inspiration in getting into broadcasting, in terms of it's a very tough job to get into, as you know, and not everybody has that, the work ethic or the voice itself. Like, what was your inspiration in doing? I know you had some writing to start off with, right? But what got you started in doing broadcasting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. Like there's not really one defining moment or broadcaster. You are dead on that Harry Callis was one of the best NFL Films voice, just that salty, like deep broadcast voice, right? That I'm not blessed with. Like there's a lot of my colleagues and guys I cross paths with in the minors. Like I would trade to have their voice in a heartbeat. Like it's just that tone, right? But for me, like I was a big Sports Center fan growing up. Huge, like Dan and Keith, those days. That was really influential for me. Like I could have seen myself, trying to be a Sports Center anchor, to be honest, if hockey didn't work out. Like that was a passion of mine. I watched Sports Center in the morning before I got on the bus, at night getting home. Like that was how in the 90s. NHL Tonight on ESPN2. Watching games with my buddies, like late night games when we're in high school, and then watching Bill Pito and those guys do their thing on NHL Tonight. Like that was probably more like influential for me than anything. Obviously being a hockey fan, and then when I had the opportunity to get to the University of Delaware and just get into broadcasting a little bit, excuse me, that was kind of like the beginning for me. But definitely influenced by Harry Callis, Merrill Reese of the Eagles. Obviously, Gene Hart was a little bit kind of my early childhood days, Hall of Fame broadcaster for the Flyers. But yeah, I think I'd listened to a lot of broadcasters, but it was really just more like a kind of a Sports Center guy and a hockey fan, and just at one point decided, like, this is kind of what I think I want to do. So when I went to the University of Delaware, I majored in communications. And then, ultimately had to do a little bit of writing and stuff just to try and like be in the industry before I could get, any type of an internship or a full-time job.
I mean, Joe mentioned it, right? Like, this is not for everyone. A lot of people don't have the fortitude to work through what it takes to get to where you are now, working for an NHL team. Talk about the path, Houston, Iowa, now with the Minnesota Wild. Like, I can't imagine that was an easy road.
I'm going to be honest, there were some 4 a.m.s getting off the bus where I was like, what the hell am I doing? It's just the reality of it. Like, I knew it was, you're talking about 30 jobs in radio. And if you combine TV, like 60, right? Some teams are simulcasting, so we'll just call it 60 jobs to get to this level. So I'm very grateful and fortunate, and I got lucky along the way. You need a break or two or more to get where, most guys want to be, which is the highest level. Some guys are content where they're at. And honestly, I was very content in Iowa. We bought a house there. our youngest son was born there. Like, we had a great setup. Had I just ended up staying in Iowa through now or longer, like, I think that would have been okay. But there are times during, basically 15 years in the minors that you wonder what you're doing. Like, should I just get out of sports, start selling cars or something? I didn't know what the fallback plan would be, which is probably why I just kept sticking it out. But yeah, it takes a lot. Takes a lot of luck. You have to have people help you along the way. Great mentors. You have to really, I think, put yourself in a good spot. Like, I was fortunate from interning with the Reading Royals in the ECHL for a couple of years to getting a break and getting a job in Boise, Idaho. Broadcaster there quit in March of 2005. I finished the season in Boise. That was like one of the best jobs, still is one of the best jobs in pro hockey, especially at that level. Like, great town, great ownership, great fan base, great rink. Like, you can't ask for anything better at the ECHL level. And I basically got the job not having to fight anybody for it because their guy quit with like 15 games left. I was interning in Reading, and they knew of me through the league office, the Steelheads management, and they were like, "Can you get on a plane?" 5 days later, I was flying to Boise, Idaho, and I spent the next 3 years there, got the job in Houston, 5 years there, team moves to Iowa, start that franchise, which was really cool to be part of like a grassroots day one organization. And I think I did like 8 seasons there. And then the 9th season, we were living there still, but I was doing a bunch of games as Bob Kurtz was kind of winding down his career. So it was really like 9 years in Iowa, but 8 seasons with the Iowa Wild. So 13 years in the American League, 3 years in the ECHL, to kind of finally start to get a real footing in the NHL. I'm just grateful Minnesota gave me a chance. Look, they could have opened up the job to everybody, and their uncle would have been sending demo tapes trying to get this job here. Again, I was just lucky to be with an organization that eventually had an opening as Bob Kurtz was, again, winding down his career, and fortunate that it worked out for me.
The people don't realize too, like that job in the AHL level is not just a broadcasting job. It's like you handle travel, stuff like that for the team. You handle a lot of wear different hats, so to speak. So I guess you mentioned those 4 a.m. getting off the bus and what are you doing? I'm sure you have some crazy travel stories or juggling things stories from your days with Iowa.
I mean, so I always sold corporate sales, corporate advertising, like from me, like, if you want to work in minor league sports, you better provide something else. You better bring something else to the table. So I was able to kind of understand that at a very early part of my career, that it was going to be important to bring in revenue. So I sold from 2005 all the way up until I got here to Minnesota. Like, that's part of the gig. Sometimes jobs in the minor league broadcasting world, they come with PR or writing or content creation now in today's world, or maybe social media help. So I, had to be versed in all that stuff. And then ultimately, the last 6 years in Iowa, I took on all the team logistics, the travel. So booking the flights, the hotels, per diem, bus trips, player transactions, helping guys find apartments, furnishing those apartments, negotiating deals with team doctors and all that stuff. And look, it's a way to make more money, if I'm being honest about it. It comes with a lot of stress and headaches, and you can't really ever turn your phone off from October to April. But with it came, really just being a big part of the organization. Like, I knew about stuff sometimes before the players knew about stuff, right? Like, that was kind of cool, just being like in and like a liaison between business ops and hockey ops, and sort of the funnel between Minnesota and Iowa at times, with guys needing car services after a game to get up to Minnesota and make their NHL debut, contracts to be signed by players. Jerry Mayhew just sent me a photo like 2 days ago. It must have popped up in his memories. He signs his first NHL contract, and I was like the witness to sign on the bottom line next to it. And it was me and him in the Iowa Wild lounge on a morning skate day. And here's this kid signing his first ever NHL ticket. So stuff like that's really cool. You get to know the players at a different level, at the minor league level. You spend a lot of time with them on the bus and in meals, and more so than at the NHL level where you're a bit more separated. And I get that. But there's definitely, moments along the way that I wish I jotted down a lot more of things, recorded things a little bit better, because the brain gets a little fuzzy after all that time. But Definitely saw some things and experienced some crazy travel days. And again, just grateful for all the experiences. I think it really helped me understand how hard it is or how hard you have to work to get where you want to be. And then when you do get there, I think you appreciate it more.
Yeah. And again, 13 years in the AHL. Here's a chance to pat yourself on the back and tell on yourself a little bit. Are there any players that you like knew, like, oh man, this is going to be a guy, and like people don't know yet, and you like totally hit on? And on the flip side, are there guys where you're like, what is this guy doing here, and then goes on to end up being a stud?
Well, I'll start on the second end of it, and this isn't a knock on him at all, but I had no idea Jared Spurgeon was going to be, 1,000 games in the National Hockey League when he got to Houston in 2010. Like I thought he was somebody's brother at Meet the Team event when the year started during training camp. Seriously, I was like, who brought their brother? I had to introduce the team. I don't think I've ever told Spurge that, but so him and I go way back, which is cool. Like I was calling games with Tyler Spurgeon in the ECHL like 20 years ago, and he's still playing overseas. So I give the Spurgeon boys credit, man. They have carved out both of them a hell of a pro career based on hockey IQ and being a good person and working their butt off and being good leaders. So Spurgeon's a guy that, like, initially when he got called up, I don't really remember him being on my radar as like we'll never see this guy again until the Calder Cup playoffs, and that was the case. And then I will say that when Spurgeon got hurt in the 2011 Calder Cup finals, we lost Spurgeon and Cody Almond in that series to the Binghamton Senators, and a 2-1 series lead became a losing game 6 of the finals, which still pains me to this day, 14 years later, that didn't get a chance to experience a Calder Cup championship. But somebody asked me at a recent event about somebody that I thought, this guy's got a chance, and Mikko Rantanen is one. Like, he was playing for the San Antonio Rampage, and was just an absolute handful at the AHL level, as you can imagine. Now, I have to say that working for the Iowa Wild, there were a couple of lean years in there where a lot of guys looked like they were going to be everyday NHLers. Like a lot of guys. Anthony Mantha had a hat trick one night in Des Moines with a shot I don't think I'll ever forget. Like, just like a world-class shot. He's had a good NHL career. Was hurt this year, but Ivan Barbashev, I'm pretty sure, had like a 4-goal game one night. In fact, when he had the overtime winner there in Game 4 in Minnesota, I got a text from Josh Fisher, and Fish and I spent a lot of time together as colleagues, and then working together, working for different teams, and then as colleagues in the minors. And he was like, man, Ivan Barbashev. And it took me a second. I went, that's right, he used to kill us with the Chicago Wolves. So I did see a lot, man. I saw like Bobby Ryan's, like, one of his like 2 only AHL games when he was with the Iowa Chops and happened to play like game number 2 in Houston in the 08-09 season. Then he never came back to the AHL. So kind of cool to like be like, sometimes I have to hockey DB guys, because I'm like, did I see him in the ECHL or the AHL? Was he in Houston for like 6 games, or was he in Iowa for a handful of games? So again, it gets a little blurry up here after all the time, but it has been cool to see guys from either the Coast or the American League that were either undrafted or high-end guys, or like when a guy like Luke Cunnin turns pro and he comes to Iowa. Like, those are exciting things. Matt Dumba, coming out first-round pick from the Western League and joining Houston for a couple games. Darcy Kemper, I called him, called his first pro games. Matt Boldy obviously got to see a little bit in the minors. So, like, there are guys along the way that you realize that they're going to be special right off the bat.
And I know you haven't been at the NHL level crazy long time, but you've been following the Wild for a long time in your time in Iowa. Like, the big kind of narrative this spring has been how this series felt different for the Wild players, for Wild staff. Like, I know it's a first-round loss, and that's hard with the history of this franchise to say it's different, or that they took a step by losing a first-round series in 6 games. But from your vantage point, did you feel there was that kind of difference to it, or is it kind of just putting lipstick on a pig here?
No, it still stings, Joe, to be honest. Like, I'm still rattled. We should be in Edmonton right now. I really believe that. This is not a knock on the Vegas Golden Knights. They're a championship caliber team. I wasn't impressed. Not like a not in that they were a cupcake, right? They were a 50-win team. I just didn't like. I thought the Wild outplayed them a lot of times in that series. They just for whatever reason couldn't catch a break, and it's funny you bring it up because it's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Is like it's just like it's so hard to win the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like the Wild could have easily won this series, and it changes the narrative immediately on this group of players and what they've been going through the last 10 years. But there's no guarantee next year anything changes. Like there's no guarantee they get in the playoffs. Obviously, with this, we expect some teams to get better. Like is Nashville going to fall on its face again? I don't know. Colorado's not going anywhere. Dallas isn't going anywhere. Winnipeg's not going anywhere. Utah's better. Like it's hard to just get in, as we saw this year. I know the Wild are banged up, but it's hard. And then I think about Tampa Bay and Colorado. Like those are two teams that could have easily won the Stanley Cup this year, and they're home. So it's like, yes, this is awesome that the team played differently and better in this playoff series. They didn't fall on their face in any game. They didn't give a game away, but they still didn't get it done. And yes, they'll add more pieces this summer. They can make moves in free agency. They've got young players coming. I'm excited about all of that. But man, it's very daunting. Like walking out of that rink after Game 6, I'm leaving there thinking, man, you got to start from square one again now, right? Like October rolls around and you got 82 games just to get back to here again, and then you still don't know what that's going to look like. So that's what makes it fun. That's what makes every year interesting and unique and challenging. But I did feel like this was an opportunity that the Wild are going to look back on and go, man, like what could have been? Because I really believe that with the way they match up or have at times against Edmonton, I know it's regular season, but when you have Brodin and Eriksson Ek that pride themselves on shutting down those two top guns in Edmonton, like I feel like, and the question marks in net for Edmonton, like why couldn't it have been the Wild had they advanced past the Vegas Golden Knights? But here we are, we're talking about it and watching from afar, and I can't imagine how painful it is for the players and the staff because from a broadcast perspective, I felt they deserved better.
I think you're right, though. I don't think Edmonton wanted anything to do with Minnesota in the second round. Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But John Hynes, widely, like, I don't think anyone would argue that he did anything wrong in the regular season. In fact, I think he did a great job with what he had there. Any decisions he made in the series that surprised you or that you would maybe say, like, hey, why did we do this?
Well, I will say this, talking to John Hynes a lot and sort of at times off the record-ish, right? Like we get a chance to meet with him separately as broadcasters, and it's kind of like an Ask Me Anything. And you take that information and I filter it the best I can. Like if I think it's something that's useful on air, that's not going to throw anybody under the bus, I'll use it. And if it's something that just file away because it's, something sort of almost in confidence, I'll make, use discretion there. But I do know one thing is that they don't make these decisions like that, right? They talk with everybody involved in the organization. They're collectively discussing these things almost ad nauseum. And I think he was in a hard spot with Z Bouillon because everybody's like, Bouillon's got, all year, I was like, I can't wait for Bouillon to get here. Maybe they'll miss the tournament, Maybe they'll lose in the field of 16. Oh, they won in overtime. Okay, I guess maybe we'll see him in the, maybe they won't get to the Frozen Four. I just kept thinking, like, late year savior. Well, ultimately, when he gets there, there's one game left, essentially, unless you're going to fly him to Vancouver. And, I don't think that would have benefited anybody. And you have two veteran defensemen that have been there all year and bailed you out all year long when you went through all those injuries. And they're guys with hundreds of games of experience. Like, do you send the right message by just going, yep, you're out, new kid's in? Like, they wanted to see what he had. Like, he's not Brock Faber. He's more Quinn Hughes than Brock Faber, right? Like, he's more power play, offensive upside. Brock Faber's like a rock back there. And Brock had the ability to play 2 NHL road games and get a little taste before the playoff series against Dallas a couple years back. So I think the coach is in a hard spot with Bouillon. I think they manage it the best they could. Maybe do you play him in overtime in game 4? Like, do you have to sit him after the penalty? I don't know. Like, you got to have feel as a coach. And I just know that John Hynes and his staff talk about all this stuff. I know the fans wanted Rossi to play more. You've got to earn it. You've got to earn the trust of the coaches and management all year long. Players are like this at times during the season, right? Like, they'll be down in the dumps, they'll be in a skid, they'll be on a heater, they'll get more ice time, and it's always earned. It's always earned. So if the coaches weren't playing guys a certain amount or scratching guys because of whatever, that's because that's what they believe that player essentially worked for or put himself in that spot throughout the season. Was the leash too long for maybe a Freddie Gaudreau or I don't know, Marcus Johansson, whatever, but I guess you could argue that. But at the same time, like those guys, Gustav Nyquist, those guys earned it with solid regular season play, and they earned the trust of the coaches to give them a longer leash. And I feel like every team goes through it. Some players are going to get what they deserve. Some players are going to feel like they should play more, and you got to love that competitive spirit of the guys.
How would you kind of compare him to Evason in terms of you getting a lot of those one-on-ones or those off-the-record conversations with him? And like I think both of them are strong coaches in their own way, different styles. I think not just with us, but with the players. But what was your kind of you had to kind of compare the two?
Yeah, I think I noticed it early on, Joe, that John Hynes was more willing to adjust quickly. That one season with Dean, Hartman, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, or from left to right, Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, like, I didn't even have to look. Like, you knew that line was playing. You knew Eriksson, Foligno, and Greenway were playing together. Like, pretty much every game. Maybe a half a period he'd switch something up, but for the most part, Dean Evason wrote those in stone, and those were your lines. John Hynes has been way different in that regard. In-game, juggling guys, sitting guys, moving guys up and down, game to game. And again, I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but that's just one thing I noticed about Dean compared to John. It's like, I don't want to say it's more loyalty from Dean, but just like almost the belief in these are like, here are the combos, we're going to let them work through it. It felt like Hynes was way more, didn't like what he saw 4 or 5 shifts in. That guy's dropping down, this guy's sliding up. And I'm sure some of that was predetermined, right? Going into the game, all right, if this isn't what I like, I've got these 2 or 3 other options. Dean, I think, probably a little bit more fiery behind the bench, right? Like the emotion, the punching assistants after overtime winners, the yelling at the refs, the F-bombs, a little bit more colorful, right? At least behind the bench. I wouldn't know, obviously, in the dressing room and their intermission speeches and stuff like that. I do know that Dean let his assistants talk a lot in between periods. I don't know if John Hynes does that as well. I just, knowing Brett McLean so well, like Dean was a big believer in letting his assistants share some of that spotlight, give them an opportunity to have their voice heard, give them an opportunity to grow as a coach, maybe become a head coach someday and feel more comfortable when those opportunities arise because of that. Again, John could be doing that as well. I just don't have that knowledge. But I just know that Dean was very much, my assistants have a big hand in how this thing runs. Again, John could be doing the same thing. I'm just not sure of that.
I had one question before our Waggle golf question, which I never interview with, but every fan has their wish list for what players that they want to see on their team next year. And I know Garen will have more money to spend, more flexibility than he ever has. I guess from your standpoint, watching the playoffs, watching the season, what's the guy you're like, this guy would be perfect, or this guy would be a big difference maker for the Wild if they could find a way to do it?
A couple weeks back, I read the Athletics like top 25 free agents or whatever, and right away I was like, Sam Bennett, that's the guy.
Yeah.
I don't know, if they have a realistic shot at that. I think he's pretty reasonable salary-wise. I want to say like $4 or $5 million now. Like if you double that and you give him 10, like is he going to the highest bidder? But as things have moved along the last few weeks, maybe last month or so, I've kind of been more like, it makes me nervous giving a guy that's 28 or older a 8-year deal for $10 million a year. I think I'd rather have a couple of guys at 5 years and 5, 6, 7 million than one big fish for 8 to 10 years. I don't know if that's like a Parisi Suter like scar tissue thing for me, or if it's just like, you know, you roll the dice when a guy gets in his mid-30s. I really feel like I would just like to see the depth part of it, right? Like the Wild need depth. They're going to have Urov coming over. They're going to have Buyam in the mix. Hopefully Juracek takes a big-time step this summer and is ready to play. But you're going to need to fill out, you know, you need a second-line scorer, and you probably could use you know, maybe 2 second-line scorers, right? However you want to phrase them or wherever they're going to slot in the lineup. If you can get me 2 guys that can fill the back of the net, I'd like the chances better than just one big fish, because we've seen injuries derail a guy, whatever. And then the Rossi thing, like, it sounds more and more like, just reading the tea leaves from some of the media, that Marco Rossi might not be here, and you might need New Jersey behind you. If that's the case, what do you get, right? Like, to me, it can't be, my opinion, can't be picks. It's got to be a player. It's got to be somebody that can kind of replace at least some of the production we've seen from Rossi the last 2 years. So yeah, give me a couple of guys in that that maybe not the upper echelon, not the Mitch Marner type, Sam Bennett type, but give me like 2 guys from that tier 1A. And hopefully Jesper Wallsted's ready to go in net, back up Philip Gustafsson and give you 20 to 25 starts. And I think if that plays out and this team stays somewhat healthy, they've got a really good chance to get back to that 100-point plateau and lock in another playoff spot.
I'm on board with that. Tell us, Joe, how's the golf game?
It's non-existent. Literally non-existent. I go to the driving range a couple times this summer, the last 2 years, because my kids like to golf. And my hands get all beat up instantly. I don't, I'm using clubs from Playing Against Sports that my father-in-law bought just so when he comes out, he can hack the ball around with something, doesn't have to travel with his club. So I don't know what I'm doing. I got no patience for it. I don't put in any time or effort with it. And I've, honestly never even really played, 18 holes in my entire life. So it is non-existent.
I was going to say you're just like me, but I've at least dabbled in the 18 holes thing. So fair.
I'm nervous to even go out and do it. I got buddies who are like, let's go golf. And I'm like, dude, I can't go out on a course for 3+ hours when I'm not even sure if I can elevate the ball, right? Like I might after 10 swings, but the 9 previous, they're worm burners, there's divots, and I'm going to want to punch somebody. I'm kind of competitive, so I don't like not being good at something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's embarrassing, right? When you're up there just hacking. And so I don't know, man.
I feel you on that. That's fair. All right, well, we'll spin this a little bit.
Final question brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order.
We usually ask people to pick 3 individuals. They can be dead or alive, celebrity, athlete, doesn't matter, fictional if you want, to round out your dream golf foursome. But for you, I'm okay with us pivoting and basically saying, hey, you're sitting down for a day of being a degenerate and watching Philly sports at a bar. Who are 3 people that you would want to bring together to be part of that experience for you?
Oh, man. Well, I think right now I'd have to go current and give me Saquon Barkley. Obviously, the Eagles can't be playing. I'd like to chill with Wayne Gretzky, to be honest. Yeah. I think there'd be a lot of good stories there. I don't know if Barkley and Gretzky would get along great. I don't know what we'd be watching together, but give me the great one.
Both like Trump, just in case, but yeah. Sorry to throw that one in there, but yeah.
I walked into that one.
Yeah.
Beer prices are going up. So give me Saquon, get a little Philly love in there. Give me the great one. I was a huge Patrick Waugh fan growing up. It's kind of cool now that, even just standing in the scrum when the Wild and Islanders played in, March, that was kind of cool just to be, 10 feet from the guy. I also loved Rob Brindamore a ton growing up, too, former Flyer. So it is cool to, be around and kind of interview those guys or be in their presence from time to time. And I've heard Patrick Waugh is a really good guy. I know a trainer there and with the Islanders, he speaks very highly of him. So Let me take my boyhood idol Patrick Watt around out there. I don't know what we're gonna watch that we'd have anything in common for. But,
TVs are off. It's just drinks and talking. I like it.
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah, that works then.
just don't ask Bruce Boudreau if Patty Waugh's a good guy. I gotta ask you though, Saquon Barkley. Are you like one of the sick puppies in Philly that's rewatched the summer Hard Knocks for the Giants over and over, seeing the Saquon Barkley sequence where they like literally just watched all of the Giants' hopes?
Yeah, when they just pigeon toss him there on television. I did watch that clip a couple of times on Twitter. I'm not a Hard Knocks guy. The Giants are brutal. I love their misery. It's all go birds, baby. But to me, Saquon, just a GOAT season. I hope he can keep it going. He is having the time of his life. I don't know if you guys paid any attention. He's at like every event. He's in all these commercials now. I just hope he hits the squat rack here soon and stays in good shape.
Yeah. That's crazy what winning will do, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Joe, for doing this. I know we went a little long, but always loved learning about the journey and the path. I think like any player I cover, any coach, I like to hear like kind of the how they got here thing. It was fun talking to you about how you got to this place too. But thank you again, and hopefully we'll pull you on sometime later in the summer when you're not obviously not golfing and you're resting somewhere in that beach house back behind you, and catch you later.
I will say I am a Waggle fan. The kids love the Waggle swag. So even though I don't golf, we have Waggle merch. And they've been doing these Edina. I live out here in Edina, insert your joke. A couple of Edina specialty Waggle hats that I've been seeing around the baseball fields, youth baseball parks lately. I'm going to have to cop one of those because I got to round out my my youth baseball. Like, you're at the field all the time. You got to have some kind of Edina swag going on, and I've been eyeing up this white Waggle Edina hat, so I'm gonna pull the trigger on that here.
There we go. Love that.
All right, appreciate you guys. Thanks.
No problem. Thanks so much, Joe.
Appreciate everyone tuning in. As you do every week, anyone that's new here, please do hit that subscribe button either wherever you listen to podcasts or go check us out on YouTube. Channel is called the SOTA Pod. And really, if any of you could go to YouTube and comment if there's trade hypotheticals that you want to explore for Marco Rossi, if you want to talk about what you would or wouldn't be willing to give in contracts for some of these UFAs, give us anything there. You can kind of view it as a quasi mailbag for things that we will get into next week across all of our shows. But otherwise, not much more to hit on here this week. I'm sure there'll be plenty that comes up in the weeks to come. And I know Russo dropped an article here this week on The Athletic focused on Zed Bouillon. I know Joe Smith is dropping some content this week on Jesper Wallstedt and the Iowa Wild. So be sure to go check that out if you're not subscribed to The Athletic already. I don't know what more we can do to compel you, but please go check that out, support them. And until then, stay classy, stay to hockey.